Okay. So in the box at the top, we're going to write our transformation form. So it's going to look like A times log base B of x minus h plus k. So A, H, and K do the same thing they've done all year. Vertical stretch compression, shift left, right, shift up, down. Log base B just means the base of our log can change, right? We can have anything for our base as long as it's bigger than 1 and positive. We specifically are focusing on base 2, base 10, and base E, right? Okay, so we're going to look at each of these, and we're going to consider f of x, and g of x is a transformation of f of x. So we're going to write a verbal description, meaning we're going to state the transformations, we're going to state the domain and the range, and if our asymptote has changed at all. Okay? So looking at this one, our first one, our f of x is log base 2 of x. That's not a transformation, that's just the type of log that we have. Okay? So we need to first look at this 5 in front. What's that 5 doing? 5 is the A, right? What is that? What's the transformation that 5 is doing to this function? Do we not know? Oh, it's a vertical stretch, right? Vertical stretch of 5. Vertical stretch of 5. And then this minus 8 in the parentheses means what?
Shift right 8.
Shift right 8. Okay? So that's all we're going to put there. Okay. I am going to actually type in the function so we can see it to answer this next part. Log base 2 of x. Here you go. And y equals log base 2 of x minus 8. Okay. Alright, so now we're looking at the purple one is the original, and, oh, I didn't know I could do that. That's cool. Alright, so if I'm talking about domain of g of x, okay, the domain of f of x was 0 to infinity, right? And what does it look like the domain of g of x is? It's changed, right? So instead of going from 0 to infinity, what's this farthest left it's going to? Can you tell what that is? That's 5, 6, 7, 8. It looks like it's getting close to 8, right? So our domain changes to parentheses 8 to infinity. Or we can say x is greater than 8, right? Okay, how about the range? Does it appear that the range is changing? Let's see. Are we still going to all real numbers? We should remember this from yesterday. Yeah, range doesn't change. So this is going to no change. It's still all real numbers. And let's see if our asymptote changes. Looking at the graph, let's see that it does, right? It's no longer x equals 0, but x equals 8. Changes to x equals 8. Okay? Now we could definitely type this in and graph all of these, but that would take a long time, and the point is that you can quickly identify all of this without having to do that. Okay? So looking at this, can you see the one thing about the equation that's going to change your domain or your asymptote? Because the range will never change, right? So there's one part of the equation that's going to change the domain and the asymptote. What is it? What's that one part of the equation? Is it going to be A, H, or K? H, right? So that's an important note I'm going to put right here. H is the only thing that changes, so I'll put changes domain / asymptote. Okay? So if we know that, we don't have to graph all of these to be able to figure out all these attributes. Okay? So let's try to do that with B. So B, we're starting with a common log function, log base 10. Okay, so we're going to pick apart all of these things. So the negative in front, when A is negative, that's a reflection over what? X or Y? X. Reflection over x-axis. Plus 2 on the inside. Remember, that's H. H is opposite, so it'll shift left 2. And a minus 4 on the outside will be a shift down 4. Okay? Okay. All right, so our domain. Okay, let's see if we can figure this out without graphing. I look at H, right? I see plus 2, but is that really a positive 2? No, it's a negative 2, and that makes sense because I'm shifted left 2, right? So our domain changes to negative 2 to infinity, or you can say x is greater than negative 2. And if you're not sure, you can pull up Desmos like I just did and type it in and see. Right? Like today we're learning, so it's okay to do that. I mean, you won't get to do that on the test, but the test is 2 weeks from now, so we're good. Could you let him in? Our range doesn't change, right? So that's still all real numbers. And our asymptote changes, right? Our asymptote is now x equals, oh, okay, okay. X equals negative 2. Negative 2 because it was shifted left 2. Okay? Does that make sense? This isn't that bad, right? I hope. Okay, looking at C, our function is natural log. Okay? So that's what we're starting with, which doesn't matter to you because you're not actually graphing it, right? But you look at the 4/9 as your A. Is that a vertical stretch? I graded a handful of assignments already, and this is what people were messing up. People said that this was a vertical stretch. That's not a vertical stretch, right? That's a vertical compression because that's lower than 1 whole, right? So it's a vertical compression of 4/9. And then this plus 6, since it's not in parentheses, that means it's a K. So this would be shift up 6. Okay, so since we don't have a left-right, our domain does not change. So there's no change to our domain. So our domain is still 0 to infinity. Our range is still all real numbers. And our asymptote is still x equals 0. Okay? All right, before we move on to the next part, do you have any questions about how to fill any of these attributes out? Okay. Transformations should be, this part should be a review. Okay, down here, we're going to go in a different direction, okay? We have the description, and we're going to build the equation, and then give all this stuff, okay? So our f of x is natural log of x, ln x, and it's reflected over the x-axis, translated 5 units to the right, and 15 units down. So we're just going to plug stuff in to this up here. Okay? So we're dealing with g of x because it tells us we're dealing with g of x equals reflected over the x-axis. Remember that is an A, so it gives us negative, right? the type of function or the type of log we have is a base e. It's a natural log. So in place of this, I write ln. 5 units to the right means I put minus 5 in parentheses with x here. So this would be parentheses x minus 5. And 15 down, minus 15. Does that make sense? So we're just putting in all these things into this equation. Okay, domain. Not 0 to infinity anymore. We're shifted right 5. And even though this is a, I'm actually going to graph this one in just a second. Actually, let me do this, because you might be wondering, well, how does the negative play into this? Let me put that on here real quick. Y equals, let me just put this, ln x, and this one's going to be negative ln x minus 5 minus 15. Okay. Our asymptote in our domain, it's still 5 to infinity, right? The negative just means it's decreasing from left to right, but it doesn't affect the domain or the asymptote at all. It just means it's decreasing left to right as opposed to increasing from left to right, okay? So our domain here is just going to be negative 5, or not negative 5, 5 to infinity, where x is greater than 5, and our range is all real numbers, or negative infinity, infinity. Asymptote changes is now x equals 5. Okay? Any questions about that one? Okay, I'm going to do one more with you, and I'm going to let you try C, and we'll check it. Okay. Our f of x and b is log base 2 of x. It's reflected over the x-axis, vertically compressed by 1/2, and translated up 1 unit. Okay, let's build it. G of x equals reflected, so negative, vertically compressed by 1/2. Remember that all that goes before the log, right? Because that's our a. So it all goes before the log. And then I have my log, which is log base 2. And translated up 1 unit. So I just have x with no parentheses and then plus 1. So there's no h in this one. Okay? So that means our domain doesn't change, right? It's still 0 infinity, where x is greater than 0. Range never changes. And our asymptote is still x equals 0. Okay? All right, take 1 minute and try C on your own, and then check it with me, okay? Let's go over it. So our f of x is common log, or log x, vertically stretched by a factor of 8. So 8 goes in front. And we're translated up 10 units. So that's a plus 10 with no parentheses. And since this one doesn't have an H or a left-right at all, then that just means our domain doesn't change. Range, of course, doesn't change, and neither does the asymptote. Still x equals 0. Okay? Can I answer any questions? Pretty good? Okay. So we're going to put this in our notebook.